This is In the Middle with Josh and Sarah Siders. We get it. You're probably going through something that's asking you to dig deep, think differently, and hold on against the odds.
So these are our thoughts about starting new things, shutting some things down, and being with you, right there in the middle.
Welcome back to the In the Middle podcast, the podcast for those of us who have not arrived yet. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Josh. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, so you guys, it is like, we don't want to timestamp this too much, but let's just say that when we're recording this, there's like feast mode going on. It's cold outside. It's that time of year. It's the holiday season.
Yeah.
And we both, as we were talking about like getting ready for this podcast, we were both like, why are we annoyed about like holiday specific podcast themes and the feeling that we're supposed to talk about things and be sort of like glib and happy, like the obligatory gratitude podcast from us, or like, let's talk about traditions. And we sat here on the couch, you guys, for like, I don't know, a while going, what are we going to talk about? Because we didn't want to do that.
No. Yeah.
We're such.
Well, it's like you want to talk about stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And not just, hey, tell me how you find gratitude in this season, or where's joy in the moment for you? Those aren't bad questions. It's like you can find that in a blog, in a podcast. And I'm just not feeling that in this moment, like as helpful. And so I'm like, I don't know how I'd answer those things. Anyway.
No.
So here we are.
It's not that we were like unofficially going to call this a grumpy podcast on gratitude, but like we don't want to it be about just gratitude.
Yeah.
I think it's like, what is it about this time of year that kind of like makes you feel that, what is that pressure that you're supposed to forget that things are hard? Because people always say the holidays are really hard for people.
Yeah.
There's like blues, there's seasonal affective disorder, you have less sunlight, you sleep more. So we know that.
Right.
But then there's this like feeling that you're supposed to hit pause on all of the things that are not resolved,
Right.
that are hard,
Right.
and sort of like smile through it or something. I don't know. And I know that gratitude is like an antidote to anxiety, right? Like it is. It's literally, it can help you. It's like can literally shift your mood. It can help your relationships. It is good, but it's like, why does it feel like what feels dismissive?
Yeah.
I'm curious, like how you
Sure.
experience it. Like sometimes you were talking about that before we went live, like about what it feels like when people go, but what are you, when you start talking about a challenge or what's hard and people go, but you have this to be grateful for, right?
Right.
Oh my gosh. I hate that.
It feels tough. Yeah, it feels dismissive.
Yeah.
In a way. It feels like you're not allowed to express what's wrong.
Yeah.
And, so some people will, it feels like rush to say, well, what are you thankful for though? Or, where do you see God showing up? Or, where are you experiencing joy? And those are fine questions.
Yeah.
If someone's droning on and on about their problems, like I get it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like let's shift them out of that.
Yeah.
And if it's like a friend that is experiencing or expressing a difficult time or just a mood, right? And we ask those questions, we rush in there to. It's almost like you're telling them, "I'm not willing or able." I don't know which one, willing or able, to bear that burden with you. I'm not willing to sit with you. And so it's no longer about you as the person expressing. It's about your friend just centered their own desire for the conversation or unwillingness. And it's like, hey, if you can't handle this right now, that's fine. Just tell me that. Just say, hey, that's really tough. I'm sorry about that. That's all you have to do. not it's my job to shift this person or it's my job to like deflect.
What do you think people do that? Like, what's behind that, in your opinion?
A lot of people are emotionally incapable
Mm,
of handling more stress
yeah,
because I think a lot of people are maxed out themselves,
yeah,
but not
that's very true.
maybe
Yeah.
honest about that or dealing with that.
Hmm.
And so if you come along with, your thing, put
Hmm.
it on top of mine, it's like, I don't have to handle this,
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I think a lot of people are at capacity
Yeah.
and don't haven't taken the time or learned the tools to like manage themselves. So
Yeah.
they externalize this like what I've got to like fix your problem. Or actually it's not even fixing your problem. I've got to shift away from your problem because I can't handle it anymore.
Hmm.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
Overwhelm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, well, there's a cultural approach, like just in general, Americans like to be cheery. And I think that, so do you remember that AI project where they reimagined like soldiers from, from 6,000 years ago, or like Vikings, or
Okay.
like all these different warriors, and they imagined them doing selfies? Do you remember this? It was this
Vaguely.
selfie project
Okay.
of all these like male warriors
Okay.
across cultures and time, and they were all taking selfies and they
Huh.
were all smiling. And everyone, like the reaction to the project was like, why does this feel really weird?
Yeah.
Part of it was like, oh, that's heartwarming at first. And then you're like, look, you're like, why do I have this secondary reaction, or maybe primary reaction? And it was because most cultures don't see themselves as smiling. In
Right.
fact, I was reading kind of a takedown of it, and there's other cultures that see like smiling as sort of like evidence of idiocy, like you're not aware.
Right.
Even cultures now that are a little bit more gritty, a little bit more, they have hardships in their life. Photographs
Yeah.
of Americans,
Yeah. It's kind of a newer thing.
yeah, where we were settling, and obviously there was obviously problems with a lot of how we
Yeah.
procured our land, but you see, and they're not smiling, and at some point, I don't know when actually,
Right.
this, but we do like to be happy, and
Yeah.
we want to be happy to the point where we want to pretend like things are okay, and we want to not have to hear about it from other people.
Yeah.
So there's just like
Yeah.
a general like avoidance of pain, or like
That's
as a
yeah.
cultural thing.
That's
And part of that feels like it's related to capitalism. And I don't exactly know why, except we are supposed to be able to buy your way out of pain.
Yeah. Buy or work your way out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you should always be grateful because there's always a way out of your pain,
Yeah.
probably.
Right.
There's a medicine, there's a treatment, there's something that you can divert your attention to. There is that. But that feels American and in a very strange way. Um, And so I think that like we have a sense of anxiety about it. And I know for me, I've struggled with being differentiated when someone brings me a problem. The role that I would play in people's lives, for whatever reason, was that like their problem is my problem. I have to help them shift out of anxiety. So
Yeah.
if someone brings a problem to me, if they're anxious, we can't end this conversation until they're not anxious anymore.
Hmm.
So the faster, depending on how well I know that person, the faster they are not in anxiety anymore, the quicker I can move on with my life. If that person is my mom, my sibling, my spouse, my kid, I'm going to be more motivated to move them through quicker, and like
Yeah.
and not show empathy because I'm intertwined with their issue.
Huh.
Like someone who I have distance from, like
Yeah.
I can show empathy to, a client or someone as soon as it does. Oh, anxiety.
Let me just ask. So this is something you feel responsible for? Someone close to you is experiencing anxiety. You as a person, you as
Mhm.
a therapist, you as a like that's a role you have
I
noticed you play, or tell me
Mhm.
more about that.
Well,
That's
it's like
interesting.
a
I don't
differentiation
I
thing.
don't have that. I don't have
You
that
don't.
sense.
You don't.
I don't have that sense to help like yeah. Surprising, right?
No,
So I'm curious about that because that's not my experience.
no.
For better or for worse, I guess.
It has codependent traits because it's like it's like it's lack of differentiation, right? Like your problem
Yeah.
exists in your body, in your mind, in your life, but we share a life and
Yeah.
a lot, not like a soul, but we have a shared existence. And so the more someone's, challenges are close to me and affect
Sure.
me, and this is true for a lot of people. So any helper type person who struggles with differentiation and like takes on other people's anxiety or overfunctions,
Okay.
that is a person who like sees themselves as responsible for in a lot of ways, like the emotions of others. So
Huh.
if you, like the adult daughter in a family that gets a lot of parental responsibility,
Sure.
it's like it's my job to help you come down, and so I'm going to use all my tools. It's going
Yeah.
to be, I'm going to try to cheer you up, I'm going to try to distract you, I'm going to dismiss this, I'm going to provide empathy, but I'm quick to a solution, I'm going to go straight to a solution. There's a lot of different, you see those women, they do it in different ways,
Yeah.
but that's a just kind of like take charge,
Yeah.
oldest daughter kind of
Okay.
type. And yeah, it does like often have to do with not being differentiated and seeing, like, being able to offer that empathy
Hmm.
to that person.
And so are you saying, especially around this time where things are hard for people and someone pops into the conversation, is like, well, so what are you thankful for? They're kind of displaying these traits of they're seeing it's their job to like fix the person or
Yeah, yeah.
okay, that's
Sometimes
interesting.
if they're trying to get there too soon. So
Yeah, right.
the path
Right.
is empathy first. And like if someone's having a hard time, like you're just never, and they're expressing this to you. Like sometimes you can say, and I try to get better at this. Do you need to vent? Like just,
Yeah.
or do you need to problem solve? Which hat do I need to wear? So they might not know,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, what I try to do, and I'm not great at this, the closer I am to someone, but it's like people need validation first because they need to know that they're not crazy. They're
Uh-huh.
not alone on their island. So I use the island like analogy a lot of like someone needs to swim over to me and see things from my perspective. If I'm having a hard time and I'm expressing that to someone and they go, well, you have a lot of things going for you, I'll be like, wow, you completely just missed me. Like you're
Right.
standing at your island yelling at me, telling me that the temperature looks good over here. And I'm telling you that I can see a dragon coming at me and they can't see it.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like, I need you to like be able to come over here. Would you be willing to step over here and look at things from my perspective? Can we start there? And this is just like any conflict resolution in general, like being willing to look at the world from someone else's perspective. Mostly we are not. But that tiny moment of like validation, like, oh, if I was in a situation, that would be really hard for me. I'm so sorry you're going through that. That can be so meaningful. Like that literally can just be like, oh, thank you so much, because we often don't know how to validate ourselves, and we do need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if our people don't know how to validate us, if everyone is around trying to cheer us up, we actually often feel like maybe we feel invisible, or we actually feel
Yeah.
like we have to keep showing up with
Right.
pain just to
Yes.
be seen.
I relate to that. Like you feel
Really?
very lonely
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it's like, but you're not getting this. Like I'm trying to express something
Yeah.
and you want to like fix
Yeah.
this or tell me this is my problem. And
Uh-huh.
there might be truth in a lot of this
Uh-huh.
stuff, but it's like it's the invalidation
Yeah.
of like I'm in pain.
Mhm.
You don't know what this pain really is like.
No.
I'm trying to explain it to you,
Yep.
and I'm leaking in these kind of ways emotionally
Mhm.
where I'm like, yeah, I look like a mess.
Mhm.
And you want to hand me a mop and say, well, let's get to work.
Let's
It's
clean
like
it up.
it's like I'm not. Yeah, but no.
It's like I need to be sad about this.
Right. I
for a
need
minute.
yeah, I need I just thought you were a safe person to bring this to. You asked me how I'm doing. You
Yeah.
seem
Oh,
like you
yeah.
really wanted to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, and now
Mhm.
you're kind of like in over your head or something.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, for sure.
it's like, and so it just leaves you feeling so lonely.
Uh-huh.
And it's like you almost have to amp up the pain or have to go, well, now I have to prove it to you. Now I have to actually state a case for why I deserve to be feeling this way. And it's just really, it's really, really hard.
Yeah, yeah, because then
Um,
you look like now you really have to like, to use a graphic term, bleed out.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
because
yeah.
otherwise no
Huh.
one is going to
Well, look who it is.
The House Panther
Yeah,
has made
he's come to yeah,
all right,
invade the
thank you.
pod.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep it
That's
moving.
Blue.
Blue.
He thinks he owns the place.
My friend Ika
Uh,
named him the House Panther, which I
yes,
think is
yeah,
like the most
that's great.
accurate thing because he's always stalking stuff. Okay.
Yes.
So,
So yeah, so I relate to that, and
and it's interesting to hear
I
from
think
your perspective,
yeah,
like how you feel like you have to go amp it up.
you have
I
to
really
amp.
haven't.
Well, I think that's why some men just keep it to themselves because it's like
Yeah.
who's a really safe person for
What?
me to bring this to because men, I have a group of men that talk about this stuff with each other, and one of them said recently, men are we have two options for emotions: anger and non-anger. Like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
normal or
Yeah.
angry.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all that we're given permission to feel. And so a lot of men just stuff this stuff, and it
Yeah.
comes out in other ways. Through, numbing or addictions or more anger and rage. Anyway, so but a lot of men don't bring this to anyone because they don't they know from experience they'll be invalidated. They'll be told to suck it up. Men don't cry. And
Yeah.
to a degree, like I get some of that. Like men need to be sturdy and stable. But I think the path to get there is not ignorance of what's going on, or
Mhm.
there's a lot of men that silently suffer, and
Yeah.
the suicidal ideation is a lot higher in certain
So
demographics.
true. So true.
But I would say it's because like we have not cultivated a culture, spaces in our culture where men can say I'm doing bad,
Yeah.
having a hard time,
Wow.
because you're labeled as weak, you know,
Yeah. You
and
have to always be
so
doing good.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, or you have people that dismiss you or try and fix you or whatever
Mm.
instead of like sit with you in that pain.
Mm.
And so
Jeez.
yeah, it's really it can be very lonely, and you feel like you don't want to have to amp up the pain because you want to feel like, okay, this is hard, but I'm handling it okay.
Mhm.
I'm working through it. Uh,
Yeah.
and when you amp it up, you're like there's a threshold where
Mhm.
it's like all of a sudden you're now, oh,
A
you're
liability.
you're a liability, or you're
Mhm.
broken, or wow, you're really a mess.
That.
And it's like,
That.
hey, how did this conversation go from I'm not really doing great to me having to prove it to you all of a sudden going, oh wow, and now you're a liability to your company or organization or family or whoever. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a bind that
Mm.
and I don't think this is
Mhm.
unique to men, but
Mhm.
I can just name this, as something that I've experienced. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Huh.
it's tough.
No, I think so. So on the other side of this, like that process of like, how are you doing? I'm not doing well. And then whatever kind of interaction happens there, and then feeling like you have to make a case, and then the other person goes, "Oh wow, like ooh,"
Yeah.
that reaction
Uh-huh.
is about you for the listener is going, "Oh, you crossed over into I know what to do here. I'm competent. I can help with this. I can help. I can help. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
competent.
yeah. There you
I'm
go.
capable. I can fix this."
Uh,
And again, I think pretty American
yeah,
because like ancient cultures that think in a circular sense in terms of a linear sense, like
yeah,
progress up and to the right. That's very American, right? But cultures that have a sense of like the circular nature might be like more willing to tolerate in my experience, like things that are hard, like the seasons, right? Like there's a death season, there's a birth season. And we like accept these things and we hold them with an open hand and we
yeah.
observe them and we experience them and we don't judge them. But Americans are like, well, if it's not fixable, I don't want to mess with it. If it's not happy, I don't want to mess with it.
Yeah,
And it's like the thing that you realize as you get into midlife is that you go, oh, a whole bunch of things aren't fixable. And as I
yep,
was coming back into my
yep.
practice, I was like, the thing that I felt empowered to do that I was not empowered to do before was sit with hard things. And I still sometimes when someone's very close to me, like with you, sometimes I move to problem solve too quickly, or
Same.
I
Yeah,
move to sit on the other side and push back because I I want to sense that you can see someone else's perspective because I'm your spouse and I want to know that if you can see their perspective, you can see mine.
right.
And so there's a lot of this like entanglement that we have
Yeah,
together. But it's like I need to be willing to, as a person, be like, oh, this is not fixable. And the
Yeah.
person isn't asking for that.
Right.
So the expression of sorrow or sadness,
Yeah.
when emotions are expressions of need. So anxiety is asking for reassurance, anger is asking for boundaries and respect, and sorrow and sadness is asking for comfort and presence.
Oh,
It
that's
is
really good.
not asking for a fix. It's not asking for a solve. If you have, or if you go through a divorce, if you have a death in your family, if you have a major loss, what is someone going to do? Like, the whole God needed another angel. Like, please do not even trifle with that
Yeah.
business. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? That's not even theology. What theology is that?
It's American folk religion.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like more. It's like, guys, no, that's not even how angels work. And like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So it's what someone says to diffuse their own anxiety,
Right.
and it's about
Right.
them. And so when people are going through grief and hardship, what they find out is they have to babysit the emotions of everyone around them
Yeah.
because no one knows what to do.
Right.
Everyone's anxiety goes up. They don't feel capable. They can't fix it.
Mm.
It's not happy. And so I want to run away from it. And
Yeah.
I felt that.
Yeah,
And when I was
sure.
an early
It's a pretty
therapist,
normal thing. Yeah.
yeah, I was like working with, moms and babies at one of the hospitals around here. And sometimes we would experience the loss of a
Yeah.
baby
Yeah.
or a mom.
Mm.
And it was just like, it was earth shattering.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, it would just
Yeah.
destroy you. And I, as a mom with
Yeah.
little kids, would feel it so deeply. And sometimes it felt like I wanted to run away. Like
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
to get out of there because the stepping as a human soul into the chasm of that grief
Yeah.
felt so inadequate. And I
Yeah.
was so aware that I didn't know what to do. I
Yeah.
didn't understand that sorrow needed presence.
Right.
It's fill the room with my presence instead of a solution.
Yeah. Right.
And
You-
now I feel like I can do that.
It reminds me of a story. There's a author, former pastor, Steve Cuss.
Mhm.
He wrote a book called Managing Leadership Anxiety.
Oh,
And he talked about when his first job out of seminary was hospital chaplain.
oh,
And so he just thought he knew everything. And so what happened was he shows up the first day of the job. I think he'd been out of seminary 2 weeks. Maybe I think he might have even got married in there. And he shows up for an overnight shift or 36-hour. The first, the first part of it is overnight. He shows up. They hand him 2 pagers, and this one is for this one's for that, and they say good luck. And
Yeah.
so he was thrown into the deep end and
Wow.
immediately started going off. And this is a major city hospital. And so he went through just everything you could think of. People having to deal with to serve families when a loved one dies,
Yep.
loss of a baby, things like that. And he was wrecked. Like he had no idea what to do or say. He was immediately thrown in the deep end. And
Wow.
he said why they do that is because they immediately want you to get in touch with your anxiety and all that, like to really confront this. I know what to do and say
Oh,
in the face of grief and death. And so they threw him in the deep end so he could come into contact with, himself basically, and his need to be whoever,
wow.
so he could work through that, identify when anxiety was in his body, into those situations.
Yep.
And then come through to the other side with good tools to use to be able to see the dynamics at play and actually be able to diffuse the anxiety in the situation.
Wow.
So, but first he just had to get like his world shattered. So that's what reminded me when you were sharing your story of not knowing what to do in a hospital situation. Knowing what to do, you actually have to confront
That's
all
for
of
sure.
that
Yep.
and recognize it as it's rising in your body to be of any service to anybody else. You actually have to deal with your own stuff. You have to
Yeah.
know it's there. You have to know how to deal with it. And you have to get to the other side of this isn't about me. It's about being present for the other people who need a person like me.
Yeah.
Who is grounded. They don't need me. They need someone who is grounded and centered and present and doesn't need something from the situation, right?
Oh my
So
gosh.
otherwise I need the situation to calm me.
Yep.
I
Yep.
need these people to do something for me.
Yep.
And so I think it's just really good to be aware of that. So I'm curious because
Mm.
we've really, I kind of think in a lot of ways stated the case, like why we have to get better at this.
Yeah.
So what are I don't think there's 5 steps for this. I think it's like find an overwhelming situation, sit down in the middle. But until you can do that, and maybe the holidays are that for some people.
Mm.
What would you say? What are a few things people can do to be better at this, and especially going into holiday conversations that might be tense, or there might be these like stress filled, like there's an episode of The Bear recently, first season actually, where it was just watching it, your anxiety is because it's this family cooking during, like, I think it's the holidays, and you just feel like I've been in this so many times. So
Wow.
what can people do to maybe be aware
Mm-hmm.
of themselves, manage what's going on inside of them,
Mm-hmm.
and do a better job than, in a lot of ways, what's been done to us and for us, where that when there's grief, when there's stress, when there's anxiety.
I mean, I think the number one thing that has to happen like beforehand is making peace with the fact that you can't solve this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That most of the time when people are bringing things to you, they're not bringing it for problem solving. Sometimes people want to complain and like you need to hear them out and then you need to switch. Like if someone's in complain mode and they
Yeah.
just want to kvetch,
Right.
it's like I'll eventually notice that that's the thread and I'll be
Right.
like, so what are you going to do about it? And I'm doing that intentionally
Right.
because I want them to take ownership. Or like if it's a gossip thing,
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Right.
And
Right.
what did they say when you brought that up to them?
Yeah. Right.
But I do like to ask the hat question, like, are we venting or problem solving? So
Yeah.
I kind of know the role that
Good.
people expect from me. But most of the time, whether I think to ask that or not, I have to like make peace with the fact that my family, my friends, the people in my life, I can't control them. I can't make them do stuff. I can't make them feel things. So much of our anxiety exists where we stand at the edge beyond our own ability to control stuff. Like I feel like anxiety is so much of us standing on the cliff of our, of our control and looking over and being like, I want to do something about
Yeah.
that. And it's like if you can kind of retract yourself into your own space, like I can manage me, then it helps a lot with I'm going to take a breath here. I'm going to sit with this person. And the expectation is not that I would solve this. Now, people do have dynamics in their families, in their marriages, where they have begun to take ownership of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
I did this for years. People would like drop the dead bird at my doorstep. Can you please do something with this for me? And that was my relationship with people. So when people came to me, they really did have anxiety and they really wanted me to solve it.
Yeah.
And I made an agreement with them
Right.
that I would.
You would. Yeah.
So I was anxious all the time. When people had anxiety, I was always anxious because that was my social agreement
Yeah.
with everyone. So I've really had to retract that. So when it comes to being with family and when there's, maybe tension or conflict or there's someone's bringing something, up that is hard, a lot of times what we're dealing with is something that's not solvable. So if we think at a fundamental level that we need to fix things, that's our job, that helping someone fix their anxiety and to get rid of the anxiety, to try to dismiss it, distract it, is how you address anxiety. If we think all that our job is to fix, then we're going to feel anxious and we're going to kind of be externally focused when
Yeah.
actually we have to recognize first as we're stepping into these spaces, whether it's our workplace
Yeah.
or just a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas thing. Most things are not solvable,
Yeah.
and that's not what people want,
Right.
right? So going back to those needs of emotion, anxiety is asking for reassurance that things will be okay, not in a dismissive way, but like, we'll figure this out together.
Yeah.
You've got support. We're here for you. That kind of thing, like a relational kind of reassurance, not,
Right.
I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Sure.
And sorrow and grief, when people are expressing loss, you don't just remind them of what they have first.
Right.
You allow them to stare into the abyss. You allow them to say, oh, wow, like, yeah, that is really sad. That is such a loss. I mean, that is really, really hard. And maybe even be quiet maybe not say
Yeah.
anything,
Right.
because presence is what is needed there. And so if we know sometimes like what is needed, if I can provide reassurance, if I can provide comfort and presence, that's what I can do. That's the
Yeah.
thing I can do. And it's counterintuitive because of our culture, but we have to give up the belief that we can fix. And I think that's going to bring a lot of peace for us in these conversations. Just being willing to listen, be curious, and then meet the need where it is, reassurance for anxiety or comfort
Yeah.
for sadness.
So what would you say if like the stress and anxiety is just in a conversation? Someone says something, someone's describing a problem they're having, and you notice like this is reaching a really uncomfortable place for me.
Mm,
What would you do?
yeah. I mean, I think sometimes it's like, it could be that it's a trigger, like it's reminding you
Right.
of something.
Right.
And so you have to pay attention. Maybe you're going to feel teary or you're going to get really tense in your stomach. Um, it depends on who the person is, but sometimes you will need to validate. Like validating can help diffuse the tension a little bit. Like, wow, that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
Um, and the person can feel heard. If they want to keep going and venting, then you are going to eventually need to. It could be something as simple as exiting.
Yeah.
Like, I need to go take care of something, and you need to like shift the room by
Yeah.
leaving and then returning, and the conversation topic typically will change at that point, or you can come back with a different topic.
Yeah.
Because once you're validating and someone keeps going, at that point they're kind of fixating on the problem and they're sort of like feeding off of the attention or the energy that they get, and that's a very common
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah.
So if you're getting like regulating yourself with a breath, I will sometimes sit under a table in a meeting table or a kitchen table, have my hands open because I'm trying to remind myself, like, I am not going to solve this. I'm
Yeah.
not going to fix this.
Yeah.
I'm going to, I'm releasing myself from responsibility for
Yeah.
how this goes. That's a huge thing for me because I
Right.
take on too much responsibility. So sitting there like this, taking a breath, being present with the person. And then if it's like, hey, if they want to derail it, like that's not my fault.
Right.
And I'm probably not going to stick around for that.
Right.
That's not my job. If it's a child, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
redirect them. But an adult, it's like,
Yeah.
this is your life and this is what you do. And I'm sad for you
Yeah.
that this is what you're doing. So I'm probably just going to exit. Or attempt to change the
Yeah.
conversation. I mean, the best that you can. Who is it? The guy on Instagram who's always talking about Harrison
Jefferson
Jefferson
Fisher.
Jefferson Fisher.
Yeah.
Jefferson Fisher. Oh my gosh, he's so great. Follow him. I think we've already talked about him, but he was talking about like hard conversations
Yeah.
at the holidays. And he said when someone brings up like a high heat conversation,
Yeah.
you can be like, I'd rather talk about you.
Right.
Sometimes people are griping about themselves.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really
That
good
is really good.
to diffuse anxiety. And
Well, I
things like
think you're touching on something that's worth mentioning. Having a couple phrases
that.
as tools,
Mm.
like thinking ahead of time of
Yeah.
like, here's how I will respond
Yeah.
if a person says this. Just having a couple things in the back pocket about hey, I'd rather talk about you, or enough about this stuff. Like, what's really going on in your life?
Yeah.
Or,
Yes.
hey,
So
I'm not interested in this conversation. Or, hey, this isn't for me. Like
Yep.
he is so good at
yes.
just giving a few, because I feel like a lot of us just get stuck because we don't have the right language.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
the anxiety just reaches this boiling over point because I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to,
Yes.
So having a
Yes.
couple phrases just in the back pocket to go, hey, this isn't for me.
Mhm.
I'd rather talk about you, or is there something on TV we can go watch? Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
good. So
It's
any final thoughts on this specific topic? Like the grumpy take on
the
thankfulness,
grumpy
whatever.
take on gratitude. I mean,
Gratitude.
you have to get to gratitude
You
eventually
do.
because
You
there's
do.
always something
do.
to be grateful for. It's true.
It's true.
But it's like if the grumpiness is there, like I would just say be your own best validator. Like
Yeah.
people think that sounds bad, but it's like I'll say this to clients. If you are not willing to validate yourself, then how are you going to go around asking other people to do it?
Yeah.
You know your story better than they do. You know your story better than anyone. So if you don't have compassion and kindness for yourself, then asking everyone else to fill that gap when you're not willing to do it, they can't fill that void.
Yeah.
So being willing to say to yourself, yes, this is really hard. This is really challenging. This moment is really difficult. you're doing a really good job. You know, saying it to yourself like you're talking to a kid, not saying affirmations like I am strong, I am forgiving, no, that's has its place. But in this case, self-validation is speaking to yourself like a kid,
Yeah.
and just being kind, being slow, and just doing that, because if you don't, you will never get everything you need externally. So that would probably be
That's good.
one of the biggest things I would say, in order to get from grief to gratitude.
Good. So what are you watching, reading, or listening to right now? And what's
I need to finish up the last episode of like season 2 with the new Frasier reboot, because that has been really fun. And I forgot to watch it this week, or maybe it's no. Anyway, I just don't watch a lot of TV, but I do
Yeah.
like that one.
Yeah.
And I am starting to read this book, which is kind of like internal family systems, which is a therapy approach that sees people as like when they represent conflicted parts of themselves as parts, like protector parts, managers, firefighters. And so it's kind of like for someone who is potentially a client, but I think what's going to be helpful is learning it from that language, because I do use that framework with clients, and it's been really helpful, and it works really well with somatic therapies,
Cool.
body-based.
Yeah.
But it will be helpful to have like the language of how to speak to people, or maybe there's some things I'm missing. So it was recommended by a therapist friend of mine, and so I'm gonna be reading that. So that's some light holiday reading.
Yeah.
Saving my butt right now, like honestly, I'm going to bed so much earlier. Is it okay if I stay asleep?
No, that is so.
It's
so good.
Like I actually need it.
Yeah.
I need it, and it's like, and it makes me feel okay. Like I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I was a little tired earlier, but I need more sleep, and I'm like, fine. I'm in my bear era.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, what are you reading?
So yeah,
listening to.
I just started Shrinking.
Yay!
So get caught up so we can watch that together. So I think we mentioned that. Maybe you were watching it
like
in a previous episode.
I betrayed you by watching it before you.
Yeah,
I watched
that's okay.
episodes.
But I understand now. It's really good.
It is
It's really,
as a therapist,
it is.
you guys. I always say it's the one role he has never played.
Yeah.
He's been a bad guy. He's been a good guy. He's been an indifferent Han Solo, and now he's a therapist, and he's so grumpy, and I love it.
So it's rated R. So just heads up.
It's rated R.
I think language. Yeah.
Oh
so
yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But it's really, really good.
It is.
Jason Segel and yeah. So
love it.
What's saving my butt? Yeah, I don't know right now. I don't have a good answer. I got like 8.5 hours of sleep last night, so I could steal your answer and say sleep, but say sleep.
You can say that.
Yeah, no, I think my I have this group of guys that hangs out.
I was gonna say that.
Eat and hang out around a fire pit. So it might be fire pit theology. It's just really good and grounded and
so cool. I love to do that.
Yeah.
That is like legit.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, okay, guys. Yeah. Well, we hope that you stuck it out through this whole gritty, grumpy grief and gratitude. Do you like that?
Wow. All the alliteration.
I made that word. The conversation that maybe you didn't want to have, but you didn't know you wanted to have. How about that? So anyway, we'll be back next week. With another episode.
I think that next week is going to be really good. I think if it's the one I'm thinking about. So, yeah.
And you never know. It's so fun. So we hope that wherever you're at, that you are safe, cozy, and having a great time managing your emotions and being present with people in yourself. Definitely binge the podcast at inthemiddlecoaching.co. Reach out to us if we can be helpful to you in that space, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you.
This is the In the Middle podcast with Josh and Sarah Siders. Visit inthemiddlecoaching.co for other resources, courses, and helpful tools.